You've been thinking about this moment for years, not in a vague, someday I'll get there kind of way. In a specific, calculated, almost obsessive way. You knew the exact number. You watched it go down every month. Sometimes you made extra payments just to feel something. You skipped vacations for it. You ate at home when everyone else went out. You said no to things you actually wanted because you were committed to this one goal. And then one day, you make the final payment. You sit there. Maybe you refresh the account page a few times just to confirm the zero balance is real. And then you wait for it. The feeling, the rush, the transformation, the version of yourself that was supposed to arrive the moment that number hit zero. But it doesn't come. You feel fine, maybe slightly relieved, but mostly just quiet, like something ended but nothing started. You thought this would feel like crossing a finish line. Instead, it feels like standing in a parking lot wondering where everyone went. This is one of the most disorienting experiences in personal finance, and almost nobody talks about it. Not because it's rare, because it's embarrassing to admit that the thing you worked so hard for didn't feel like you thought it would. So today, we're going to talk about exactly why that happens. Because it's not a personal failure. It's actually one of the most predictable psychological phenomena in behavioral economics. And understanding it might be the most important financial education you never got. My name is Arthur, and I spend way too much time thinking about money and why smart people feel so confused by it. If you've ever hit a financial goal and felt weirdly empty afterward, make sure to hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Let's start with what you actually expected. The fantasy most people build around debt payoff is remarkably consistent. Ask anyone paying down a credit card or a student loan what they think life will look like after, and you'll hear some version of the same story. Freedom, lightness, a sense of control that finally feels real. More money every month that finally belongs to them. Confidence, the ability to make decisions from a place of strength instead of obligation. These aren't unreasonable expectations. They're not delusional. They're actually accurate descriptions of what becoming debt-free theoretically provides. You do have more money. The obligation is gone. The psychological weight should lift. But here's the thing nobody talks about. The human brain is extraordinarily bad at predicting how it will feel about future events. Psychologists call this affective forecasting, and decades of research show we are consistently wrong about the emotional intensity and duration of positive life events. We overestimate how good we'll feel and how long that feeling will last. A 1998 study by Daniel Gilbert and Timothy Wilson found that people dramatically overestimated how happy major positive events would make them. Lottery winners, job promotions, achieving long-term goals. People predicted sustained euphoria. What they experienced was a brief spike followed by a relatively quick return to their emotional baseline. Your brain does something called hedonic adaptation. It adjusts. What felt like a burden becomes normal background noise, and when it's removed, the brain recalibrates faster than you expect. The relief doesn't accumulate. It arrives and dissipates within days or even hours. But there's something more specific happening with debt payoff, and this is where it gets interesting. When you're in debt, your brain assigns a very concrete identity to the money leaving your account each month. That payment has a face. It has a name. It represents something specific, a mistake, a necessity, a burden, a battle. Every payment is a small act of combat against something you resent. And combat, psychologically speaking, gives life structure. Not good structure, not comfortable structure, but structure, purpose, a defined enemy, and a defined mission. You knew exactly what you were fighting for every single day. When the debt is gone, the structure dissolves. You have the money now, but the money is just there. It doesn't have the same narrative weight as the debt did. Saving feels abstract compared to the visceral act of paying something down. Investing sounds responsible but lacks urgency. The enemy has been defeated, and you're standing in a silence wondering what exactly you're supposed to do next. This is the gap that nobody prepares you for, the transition from fighting a concrete enemy to managing abstract freedom. Think about it this way. Imagine you've spent 3 years pushing a boulder uphill. Every day is hard. Every inch is a battle. Your entire identity has been defined by pushing that boulder. And then one day, you get to the top. The boulder is over the edge, gone. Now what do you do with your hands? The psychological void that follows debt payoff is real, documented, and almost universal. In a 2019 survey by Experian, nearly 40% of respondents who paid off significant debt reported feeling unexpectedly directionless in the months that followed. Not broke, not struggling, just lost. Here's where most people mess this up. They interpret the emptiness as a signal that something is wrong with them, that they should feel better than this, that maybe they didn't actually want freedom as badly as they thought, and so they do something that makes intuitive but financially destructive sense. They fill the void. Within 18 months of paying off debt, studies show that a significant portion of people accumulate new debt, not because of emergencies, not because of genuine need, because the psychological mechanisms that drove the debt in the first place, lifestyle inflation, emotional spending, keeping up with social expectations, were never actually addressed. The debt was the symptom, the behavior was the disease, and paying off the debt without treating the behavior is like taking painkillers for a broken arm and calling it healed. This is the trap that financial advice almost never covers because it's uncomfortable. We like clean narratives. Person gets into debt. Person pays off debt. Person is free. Roll credits. But what actually happens is messier. Because the feelings that created the debt, inadequacy, social comparison, the belief that spending is the fastest way to feel better, those feelings don't go away when the balance hits zero. Let's talk about the math for a second, because there's something genuinely stunning hiding in this moment that most people completely miss. Say you were paying $400 a month toward a credit card balance. You've just made that final payment. That $400 is now yours. Every month, $4,800 a year. Over 20 years at a 7% market return. If you invested that freed up cash, it becomes approximately $245,000. That's not a hypothetical. That's basic compound interest math available on any calculator. But here's what actually happens to that $400 in most cases. It quietly disappears into lifestyle. A slightly nicer dinner here, a streaming service you didn't need, a clothing purchase that felt justified because you'd been depriving yourself. And suddenly you look up 6 months later and you can't account for where any of it went. The freedom you worked years to create evaporates not through one catastrophic decision, but through 100 tiny unconscious ones. The reason this happens is deceptively simple. We are goal-oriented animals. Our motivation systems are designed to move toward specific targets. When the target disappears and no new target replaces it, the system defaults to whatever behavior is easiest and most immediately rewarding. And for most people, the easiest, most immediately rewarding behavior is spending, not saving, not investing. Spending, because spending provides instant, concrete, sensory confirmation that you have money. Saving provides a number that goes up slowly and requires you to delay gratification indefinitely with no defined endpoint. Here's the practical truth that nobody gives you when you make that final payment. The celebration you're waiting for doesn't exist in the moment of payoff. It exists 5 years after payoff when you're looking at an investment account you built instead. That's when the feeling arrives. That's when it actually feels like something. But you have to bridge the gap between paying off the debt and seeing that investment account grow. And that bridge is made of one thing, replacing the old goal with a new one before the void has time to fill itself with old habits. The most financially successful people don't experience debt payoff as an ending. They experience it as a pivot point. They've already decided, often months before that final payment, exactly what the money is going to do next. There's no gap, no silence. The $400 that was fighting the credit card is already scheduled to hit the brokerage account before the credit card even knows what happened. The psychological key here is continuity of purpose, not continuity of struggle. You don't need a new enemy. You don't need new debt to give your money meaning, but you do need a destination, a number that's going up instead of a number that's going down, something concrete to orient your financial decisions around, or the decisions will make themselves and they won't make them well. So if you're approaching your final payment, or you've already made it and you're sitting in that strange silence, here's what I want you to do. Don't celebrate and drift. Decide the day before your last payment exactly where that monthly amount is going. Investment account, emergency fund, specific savings goal. It doesn't matter as much as the decision being made. Automate it before the money is available to spend, because the gap between intent and action is where financial progress goes to die. And if you already paid off the debt and you've been drifting, if you recognize the pattern I've been describing, it's not too late. The pivot is available to you right now. You just have to make it before the next statement closes. The goal was never zero. Zero was just the door. What matters is what you build on the other side of it.